Chisilo, can you just give a summary, any areas that are peculiar that you would like the members to notice? It is Chisilo. Chisilo, can you just give a summary, any areas that are peculiar that you would like the members to be amended? It is Chisilo. Chisilo, can you just give a summary, any areas that are peculiar that
you may proceed, Mr. Mwanza.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair and colleagues. The purpose of
can you just give a summary, any areas of the regulator that you would like the members to be amended? It is can you just give a summary, any areas of the
you may proceed, Mr.
generation facilities and their respective customers who will be operating for commercial purposes, and also note their tariff between three generation facilities and their respective customers, and also to approve the draft decision and the reason for decision documentation for each applicant. Madam Chair, this matter is duly delegated to the Regulator Executive Committee in terms of paragraph 1.4.1 of the delegation matrix, as well as paragraph 1.5 of the delegation matrix. Madam Chair, the critical parameters of the project are detailed in table 1 of this submission, which is on page 3 of 37 of the submission peg. Just to highlight some of the developments, Madam Chair, we are in a process of revising our registration procedure due to the fact that we have been advised to loosen the requirement, such that a requirement of a power purchase agreement we will no longer require such for registration purposes. The registrant will just indicate who is the customer and what's the term of the agreement and also the tariff thereof. These 32 registration facilities, Madam Chair, they comply with our current regulation and law. They all have the power purchase agreement. Those who are commercially involved, they all have the connection agreement with their respective network service provider. They have all paid the registration fee of 200 rand per generation facility. Therefore, Chair, we recommend that the Regulator Executive Committee approve the issuance of this registration certificate as we have stipulated in page 10 of 37 of this submission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mwanza. Members, any questions or issues of clarity or points of enhancements that you might want to make to the submission? Mr. Mkiza, I see your hand is up. You may come in, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks to Mr. Mwanza for the presentation of this submission. I would like to just first of all to comment, excuse me, on the process. That my understanding is that due process is going to be followed to change the procedure, such that we look at all the. It is a thought through process to ensure that the pros and cons are clearly understood, and then where there are risks, those risks are also properly mitigated. With regard to the submission itself, I would appreciate if it can be possible from your side to also note the timelines or period taken to approve each of these somehow to be, maybe if you can have a table that includes just a summary of that in view of the concerns around alleged delays by NERSA to approve registration, so that we can have all the facts on the table at all times from our side as regulator members as well. And then I would also like to get clarification. I think it's on page 8. You are saying that I know it's always there, but maybe we need just to improve the writing, because on under 5.2.4, you say in the second sentence there reads, therefore, reasons for not observing procedural fairness must be detailed in the decision. My understanding is that we are still observing, we remain procedurally fair, but we are not observing the normal procedure. It just somehow it reads otherwise. You can correct me if my English is wrong in this regard. How someone else could interpret it. So I just want you to, I would like you to assist me with that. And then on the submissions, then the individual applications themselves, I would appreciate if you can correct, when you go to page 2 of the first submission, submission application by Lordstone Investments, you've got a figure there, 4 talks to operation of a 0.2 megawatt generation facility, as opposed to what table 1 below states, which is stating a 0.36, as well as the recommendation talks to a 0.36. If you can make sure that there is a reconciliation of that. I think the same challenge one gets when you go to page 18 on the application by Thornlands Park Store. You paragraph 5 says 0.55 megawatt generation facility, whereas this is a 0.11. That 110 kilowatt facility. If you can just correct that, please. And then I think check it as well with respect to others. I think on page 40 also, you're talking of the plant there generating those gigawatt. I'm not so sure if that is calculated correctly. If you can just check that. Otherwise, I'm hip on my side. Thanks. I think the last one, Chairperson, is paragraph 32 on page 40 of 380. I rest my case. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. I think you did touch on I don't see any other hand, but I just wanted to say you did touch on my point that I was going to seek clarity on from Mr. Mwanza, which was the issue of consideration of the PPAs, because my view was that there will be a formal submission that will highlight the reasons for and against in terms of why the PPAs should be taken out of our registration procedures than to have an amendment to the registration procedures before that issue is brought to this committee or the ELS, such that it's debated and there is a decision. I just wanted to get clarity on that in terms of what he said in his presentation. Thank you. Mr. Mwanza, I don't see any other hand from the members. You may come in and respond to the issues raised by Mr. Mkhize and mine. I think you can combine mine with that of Mr. Mkhize. Please come in.
Thank you, Chair. May I request Mr. Siamela to take the question for the procedure before I respond? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Siamela. You may come in.
Madam Chair, the issue of the PPE, can we discuss it when bringing the submission to the board in terms of like the reasons, pros and cons, why we're doing that? Because today is not the issue of the PPE, it's the issue of like not approving the registration certificates. So that submission is coming through. Mr. Mwaza is just making the members aware that no, this submission that's coming through. So the pros and cons and the debate behind that, and the reason behind that, we'll bring it in as management. And I leave it at that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we were not saying that we should debate it. We wanted confirmation that a formal submission is going to be brought to the relevant committee, indicating the pros and cons as to why this issue should be dealt with in a particular matter. So thank you for that response, Mr. Siamela. That was, I think, the expectation of a response from members to say it will be coming through in a formal way in terms of a submission for it to be considered. Mr. Mwanza, you may proceed with the other questions raised by Mr. Mkiza. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, in terms of the timelines, the period it had taken us to process this registration certificate, we will enhance the submission in the future to indicate the timelines. However, if I may say, Chair, on average, it takes 28 days to process this application, provided that the applicants they are cooperating. Thank you. The issue of the clarification on paragraph 5.2.4 of the submission, we will enhance it. We will request legal to assist us on this paragraph. Mainly, it is discussing the reasons why we deviate going to the public participation for the registration process. However, Mr. Mkize's matters are noted. We will request us to assist us on that regard, so that the reader might find it easy and not confusing. And lastly, we also accept the corrections. We will enhance and we will check and verify the capacities on each and every RFD. I think there was one which I think it was page 40, where Mr. Mkeza was saying is gigawatt. Now the gigawatt might be to illustrate the generation capacity for the period of a year. Hence, it was a gigawatt unit there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Mkize, are you sufficiently covered with your issues?
Chairperson, I'm covered in the sense that they are going to enhance the submission accordingly, and that will be appreciated. And the summary is actually there just to refute whatever allegations regarding our delays, which I think will help to give a helicopter view in the submission part, and that is appreciated. And therefore, I would gladly support the approval or the recommendation as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mwanza, I think maybe in terms of timing, for some of us, you need to clarify exactly, because the time that it takes for us to consider these registration applications. My understanding was that it was 60 days initially, and we reduced it to 45. Am I correct to interpret the 28 days that you have just mentioned to say that when everything that we have to receive, it's submitted in full, therefore it takes us 28. And if there are issues, at most we have tried to do finalize the application in 45 days. Am I correct to interpret the days that it takes for us to consider an application in that manner? Mr. Mwanza?
Chair, may I respond on behalf of Mr. Mwaza? In terms of how long it takes us to approve an application, initially it was 60 days, is correct, and then we reduce it after we took the procedure to the subcommittee to 45 days. We start calculating the days after the applicant is paid the registration fee. So what Mr. Mwaza is talking about, 28 days, on average, maybe he didn't put the word average. On average, it takes us 28 days once an applicant has paid the registration fee and we've got all the information that is required and applicable to the application of registration. So we're even trying by all means, Madam Chair, to do it even at a lower period than even 28 days. Thank you. Mr. Mwaza, you can support me what I'm saying.
Supported, Mr. Semela. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, members, I don't see any other hands. May I request that we move to the recommendations, which are on paragraph 15 of page, paragraph 15, page 10 of the submission. And in terms of the recommendation, as a committee, we are required to approve the issuance of the registration certificates to 29 generation facilities listed in Table 1 for generating electricity for own use. And 15.2, we are requested to approve the issuance of registration certificates to 3 generation facilities listed in Table 1 for generation of electricity for commercial purposes. 15.3, we are requested to note the PPA between the 3 generation facilities and their respective customers. And 15.4, to note the tariff between the 3 generation facilities and their respective customers. And 15.5, approve the draft decision and reasons for decision documentation for each applicant attached here to as Appendix 6. Members, for record purposes, before I take an indication in terms of whether you approve and note what has been recommended, with your permission, let me go and read the generation licenses for own use in Table 1 and as well as for commercial purposes. And thereafter, we'll then take an indication of members' decision in terms of the approval and the noting of the recommendations. In terms of the generation application, in terms of the registration applications that we have received, they are 29 and they read as follows: from P3 to P6. And the first one is let me start. It's number 1, it's 4x4 Bruderay EDMS BPK Chola. It's for capacity 0.330, technology solar PV, and it's in KZN. And the second applicant is Danjo Bruderay Pty Ltd, 0.350 capacity, it's solar PV, and it's in the Free State Province. And the third applicant, it's Growth Point Securitization Warehouse Trust, and its capacity 0.5518 solar PV, and it's in the Gauteng Province. The fourth applicant is Jubet and CN Citrus Pty Ltd, 0.166 capacity solar PV, and it's in the Mpumalanga Province. The fifth applicant is Jubet and Fester Agri EDMS BPK, I beg your pardon, capacity 0.150 is solar PV, and it's in the Free State Province. And the sixth applicant, it's Midway Crossing, and capacity 0.770 solar PV, and it's in the KZN Province. The seventh applicant, it's Paul de Villiers, capacity is 0.315 solar PV, and it's in the Northern Cape Province. And the eighth applicant, it's Paul de Villiers again, and 0.165 solar PV, and it's in the Northern Cape Province. And the 9th applicant, it's Paul de Villiers, and it's 0.284 solar PV, and it's in the Northern Province. The 10th applicant is Planergy Pty Ltd, 0.235 solar PV, and it's in the Free State. The 11th applicant is Redefined Properties Limited, 0.201 in terms of capacity, technology solar PV, and it's in the Gauteng Province. The 12th applicant is again Redefined Properties Limited, and the capacity is 4.450 solar PV, and it's in the Northwest Province. The 13th application is Redefined Properties again, and it's in the Gauteng, 0.253 in terms of capacity solar PV. It's in the Gauteng Province. The 14th applicant is Western Platinum Limited, 0.990 solar PV, and it's in the Gauteng Province. And the 15th applicant is Style Props Pty Ltd. Style Props 163 Pty Ltd. Capacity 0.256 solar PV, and it's in East London. And the 16th applicant, it's UCL Company Pty Ltd. Capacity it's 5.5. It's biomass technology, and it's in the KZN province. 17th applicant is Red Dot Farms Pty Ltd, 0.130 in terms of capacity, solar PV, and it's in the Western Cape. The 18th applicant is Redefined Properties and Exemplar Retail Ltd. Capacity is 1, and it's solar PV, and it's in the Gauteng province. 19th applicant, it's Lodestone Investment Pty Ltd, and it's 0.36 capacity solar PV, and it's in the Gauteng province. The 20th applicant, it's Thornlands Parks Tour Pty Ltd, 0.11 solar PV, Western Cape province. And the 21st applicant is Net Water Properties Pty Ltd, 0.2 solar PV in the Gauteng province. And the 22nd applicant is Lawa Estate Pty Ltd, capacity 0.2 solar PV in Mpumalanga province. 23rd applicant is Jubet and Fester Agri Pty Ltd, 0.15 solar PV. It's in the Northern Cape province. The 24th applicant, it's Water Comfort Wholesales Pty Ltd, 0.803 solar PV in the Free State. 25th applicants, it's TerraJu 3 Pty Ltd, 0.330 solar PV in Mpumalanga. 26th applicant is Wispeco Pty Ltd, mixed, and it's 0.330 solar PV, Gauteng province. And the 27th applicant is Wispeco Pty Ltd, and North 0.363 solar PV in Gauteng province. And the 28th applicant again is Wispeco Pty Ltd, Profile East 0.660 solar PV in Gauteng province. Again, the 29th applicant is Wispeco Pty Ltd, Remelt 0.440 solar PV in Gauteng province. Those are the application for registration for generation for own use as indicated under 15.2. And proceeding to those that have applied for registration for commercial purposes, we've got 3 applications, and they are, the first one is ABO Wind PV Pty Ltd, capacity 100 solar PV, and it's for the Northwest Province. Again, the second application is ABO Wind PV Pty Ltd 3, 100 in terms of capacity solar PV, and it's in the Northwest Province. And the last applicant for commercial purposes is Next Renewable Generation Pty Ltd, and capacity is 0.600. It's solar PV, and it's in the Western Cape. Members, going back to the recommendations, those application for registration read into the record are for 15.1 and as well as 15.2. By show of hands, members, may I get an indication of whether you approve the recommendations that are for approval? And the approval are on the 29 generation licenses for all use, and as well as the 3 generation licenses for commercial purposes, and the noting of the PPA and the tariffs, and as well as the decision and reasons for decision. By sure. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Masetti. Thank you, Mr. Mkiza. And I also approve. Mr. Mwanza and Mr. Semela, your submission is approved. And that was our only item on the agenda on the open session of our meeting. May I then request, since we have come to the end of our open session, we'll now be closing the meeting in terms of Section 8.9 of NERA. And may I thank our stakeholders and interested and affected parties who have joined us in this meeting, and request our IT to stop this.